The inspection bay of Space Station Elias 9 was quiet. Too quiet. The hum of the overhead lights buzzed softly as Human Officer Kalen walked between rows of cargo crates. He checked his scanner, looking for any signs of contraband or unusual activity. Behind him, his partner, Alien Officer Liorako, walked with silent steps. Her tall, thin body shimmered slightly in the station light. She had 4 fingers, sharp silver eyes, and a voice like calm wind. They were partners in security for almost 3 years now. They trusted each other, had seen weapons hidden in medical packs, drugs disguised as food, even a whole alien tiger once packed in cryo-freeze. But today felt different. Kalen stopped suddenly. "You hear that?" he whispered. Liraka tilted her head. "No. What did you hear?" Kalen raised a hand. There it was again, a soft, high-pitched sound, almost like a whimper. A small, shaking breath, not mechanical, not a leak. It sounded alive. Kalen followed the sound, leading them toward the back corner of the cargo bay. Most crates were labeled and cleared, but one stood out. It was large, old, and covered in stains. The tag read, "Medical Waste Biohazard," but the scanner in Kalen's hand blinked red. "There's organic movement inside," he said. Heartbeat. Weak Liraka frowned. "Could be an infected animal. Protocol says, report it." Kalen shook his head. "If it's alive, we check it now." He pulled out a metal cutter and slid it across the crate's seal. The hiss of released pressure escaped. The lid opened slowly. Both officers froze inside the crate. Sitting between shredded cloth and old packaging foam was a small alien child. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes too large for her face. She clutched a broken toy, something with spinning lights now cracked. Her body shook from fear. Her lips were dry, her stomach sunken. She looked up at them with wide, terrified eyes. Kalen stepped back, stunned. That's a child." Liraka quickly scanned her. Barely alive. "She's dehydrated, malnourished. She's been in there at least 4 days." The little girl blinked slowly. Her mouth opened slightly. "More," she whispered. One word. Then she passed out. Kalen caught her before she hit the floor. She was too light. Her arms were like sticks under the uniform. Small tag hung around her neck, no name. "Just a..." Code Liraka looked inside the crate. There were no blankets, no food, just the toy. "This wasn't an accident," she said quietly. "Someone put her here, like garbage." Kalen's jaw clenched. "We need to scan the rest of the bay." They moved fast, heart pounding, checking crate after crate. Most were normal food shipments, tech equipment, legal goods. Then they came to another crate, same markings, same old stickers. Again, the scanner lit up. Kalen and Liraka didn't hesitate. They opened it. Inside, they found another child, this one older. He was curled up in a corner, eyes wide open but unblinking, too weak to speak. He didn't even flinch. "Emergency. Medkit," now Kalen said. .lir, aka rushed to the wall unit and pulled out oxygen gel and nutrition packets in less than 20 minutes. They had opened 5 crates, each one hiding a child. Some were awake. Some were not. All were different species. All were small. All looked half dead. Kalen looked around at the children lying on the floor now, wrapped in emergency blankets. Some held hands with each other. One rocked quietly. Another stared at the wall. Liraka's hands trembled as she spoke. This is not smuggling. This is something worse. Something organized." Kalen nodded. "Someone's treating these kids like cargo." He touched the small blue girl's hand. Her fingers curled around his. Suddenly his cum buzzed. A voice came through Station Command. "Inspection Team 12. Report status. We noticed unauthorized crate access. Please confirm your activity." Kalen paused, then looked at Lara. She nodded. He tapped his cum. "We've got a situation. Multiple minors. Alive. Abused. They need medical help now." The voice on the other end hesitated, then said, "Copy that. Stay in the bay. Help is on the way." Kalen didn't like the tone. He turned to Laraka. Did you hear that? Something's off. We agreed. We found children. But who else? Knows we did? As they looked at the kids, the blue girl stirred again. She looked at Kaylin, eyes half closed, and whispered something else, just one quiet word. Hide. And then the lights flickered. The medbay smelled like burned plastic and antiseptic spray. Kaylin stood by the wall, arms crossed, his eyes fixed on the small, blue-skinned girl sleeping on the narrow bed. A slow pulse blinked on the screen above her head, weak but steady. She was alive. Barely across the room, Laraka sat beside another child. This one was green-skinned, with 3 fingers on each hand and strange, transparent eyelids that never fully closed. He hadn't spoken since they'd opened his crate. He only flinched when the medbot tried to check his vitals. Curling up and covering his face with shaking arms. Kaylin hated this. Not just because of what he saw, but because of what he didn't. These children weren't reported missing. No alerts, no biological registry, no family matches in the database. It was like they didn't exist. Laraka finally spoke. I scanned the DNA markers. Some of them don't even match known species in the interstellar records. Kaylin turned. What does that mean? She hesitated. It means someone went through a lot of trouble to either hide who they are or make them. Kaylin's voice dropped. Clones? Maybe? Or hybrids? Genetic experimentation. Or ... something worse. Da! There was silence between them for a while. The soft beeping of the machines filled the space like a heartbeat. Then Kaylin took out something from his Paquita small chip. Barely the size of a fingernail. She slipped this into my hand, he said, nodding toward the blue girl. Right before she passed out. Laraka leaned closer, surprised. You didn't tell Command? I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. He slid the chip into his personal datapad and projected the contents on the wall. At first, just darkness. Then, a shaky video began to play. The image showed a large storage bay, unlike the one they'd just been in. Crates stood in rows. A man walked through them, tall, dressed in a diplomatic uniform, carried a small scanner and tapped each crate. As he walked, the sound of children crying echoed faintly. Not loud, not panicked, just tired. Resigned. Then came the voices. These 3 go to the Morand cluster, a woman said. The buyers want them young. Make sure they don't talk. This batch, the man replied. High value. They've been pre-bonded. Will obey on contact. Perfect for long-term companionship packages. Kalan froze. Laraka's face went pale. They single, played, being sold. For loyalty, labor, maybe even worse, Kaylin said. His voice low and bitter. The video ended with a screen showing numbers, transactions, digital signatures. Most of the buyers had diplomatic immunity. They stood in silence, watching the screen fade. What do we do now? Laraka asked, before Kaylin could answer. The COM panel by the door beeped. Inspection Team 12, said a cold voice. This is Security Command. Stand down. The transport crew is en route to collect the juveniles. You are no longer required. On this matter, Kaylin and Laraka looked at each other. That wasn't standard protocol. No request for medical analysis, no child welfare unit, just removal. Kaylin walked to the door and quietly locked it. They're going to make them disappear, he said. We can't let that happen. Laraka walked to one of the kids. Little girl with short yellow hair and tiny scales on her cheeks. The girl looked up, scared. Laraka bent down slowly and smiled. We're not letting anyone take you. She whispered suddenly. There was a soft knock on the medbay door. Kaylin stood still. The knock came again, this time louder. This is Unit 6 Alpha. Open the door. Officer Kaylin. We have orders from High Clearance. Kaylin turned off the lights. The children stirred. One of the boys began to whimper. He moved quickly, gathering the datapad, the chip, and motioned Laraka to get ready. Then came a different voice. Small, soft, from behind the row of beds. It was the blue-skinned girl. She was awake again, sitting up slowly, her broken toy still clutched in one hand. More, she whispered again. Kaylin knelt down. More of what? Tell me. She blinked. More, crates. LaRocca gasped. There are more kids.
The girl
Nodded weakly. Under docking bay 9. Cold. Dark. Waiting. Outside the door hissed as a manual override tried to engage. Kaylin stood. We don't have time, LaRocca looked around the room. There were 7 kids in total, some unconscious, some half aware. None of them could walk on their own. Not fast, at least. Kaylin tapped his wristband. Sent a code black to maintenance. I need 1 medloader bot unregistered at my location. That's illegal, LaRocca said, even as she helped lift the green child onto a stretcher. He smiled grimly. So is selling children. A few minutes later, the medloader bot arrived slow and quiet. It rolled in, disguised as a trash collector. Kaylin helped the kids inside the container, laying old blankets and discarded food wrappers over them outside. The voices got louder. Open this door, or we'll force it down. LaRocca turned to the blue girl. Dock and Bay 9, how many more? Are there? The girl whispered. A lot. Babies too. But they cry too much. Kaylin nodded, then we better move. Quietly. The bot rolled out the back door just as Kaylin and LaRocca slipped into the shadows. They had just broken half a dozen laws, and they were about to break more, because now it wasn't just a security job. Anymore, it was a rescue, and time was running out. The night cycle lighting on Space Station, Elias 9, shifted to low red, bathing the hallways in dim shadows. Most of the station slept, but not Kaylin. He moved silently through maintenance shaft 7, one hand on his sidearm, the other gripping a stolen keycard. Behind him, LaRocca followed, clutching a scanner that pinged faint biosigns beneath the floor. Her sharp vision kept watch in every direction, while her long coat hid the blue-skinned girl pressed gently to her chest. The girl barely made a sound. Her breathing was slow, her eyes heavy, but she stayed awake, her hand gripping LaRocca's collar like a lifeline. They had broken into restricted access. Tunnels. They were no longer officers tonight. They were fugitives. We're close, whispered LaRocca. Below this hatch. Kaylin knelt by the floor panel and slid the card into the port. The panel blinked green, then unlocked with a soft hiss. The hatch creaked as it opened, revealing a dark storage tunnel beneath. The scanner beeped wildly. Dozens, she whispered. All weak, some barely detectable. He didn't wait. He dropped down first, landing with a grunt on the cold metal. His boots echoed softly, and then LaRocca lowered the girl down into his arms before climbing in herself. The smell hit them immediately damped. Air, stale breath, and something worse, fear. Their lights flicked on. The tunnel stretched long and narrow, lined with metal racks, boxes, and waste. But between the containers were Kajez's small ones, dirty, cramped. Children lay inside them, some sitting up, most not. One cage held 3 infants with glowing eyes, their skin so thin their veins were visible. Another held a boy who was clearly a man, older but his eyes were blank, his mouth sewn shut. Kaylin's heart sank. They hadn't found the edge of the operation. They had just scratched the surface. LaRocca opened the first. Cage gently. The little girl inside didn't move, but her eyes followed LaRocca's hand like a trapped animal. She reached slowly. The girl flinched. No harm, LaRocca said softly. No more cages. Behind them, a small voice spoke. It was the blue-skinned girl again. They don't believe, she whispered. They think you're more buyers. Kaylin knelt beside her. Kay, tell them we're not? She nodded and opened her mouth, but instead of words, soft tone came out, high-pitched, melodic, a language not meant for human ears. Slowly, the children began to stir. Some blinked, others sat up, a few crawled forward, pressing their tiny hands to the bars as if testing a dream. LaRocca gasped. She's a translator singer. Kaylin looked confused. Her voice can trigger trust in her kind. It's genetic. A safety trait. The blue girl kept singing, even as her voice cracked. Her broken toy blinked faintly with each note some kind of resonance tool. The kids responded. Kaylin and Laraka moved fast, unlocking cages, lifting children, out wrapping them in heat-dash blankets. One of the boys, older than the rest, grabbed Kaylin's sleeve. They said we were going to be owned, he said, in a shaky voice. I didn't want to forget my name. I kept whispering it to myself every night. What's your name? Kaylin asked. Raj? Kaylin squeezed his shoulder. You remember it. That's all that matters. Suddenly, Laraka's come buzzed. A private ping. No sender ID, she answered cautiously. The voice that came through was deep and calm. You're not supposed to be there, Officer Laraka. She froze. Who is this? The voice didn't reply. Instead, a live feed appeared on her scanner camera angle from the tunnel entrance. Two black-clad figures stood outside the hatch. You're interfering with protected cargo? The voice said. Return to your quarters and pretend this never happened. Kaylin stepped forward. If you touch these kids, then more will suffer, the voice interrupted. These aren't just children. They are investments. Biotech. Property. You're risking war treaties, trade deals, entire colonies just to play hero. Laraka cut the line. The screen went dark. I've heard that voice before, she muttered. I just can't place it. They didn't have time to figure it out. Kaylin checked the hatch above, still locked for now. He turned back to Laraka. We can't take them all on foot. There are at least 30 kids down here. She nodded. Slowly. Then we moved the station around them. Kaylin blinked. What? She pulled up the map. There's an old gravity waistline, unused. Runs straight to the old hydroponics bay. We bring a shuttle there, load them in, and fly them out under a false cargo tag. Not if it's stolen. He stared. At her, Laraka smirked slightly. Forget used to be a smuggler before I joined the force. I didn't forget. I just hoped it wasn't still in you. She looked around at the cages, her face cold now. It is. Tonight. They worked in silence, forming small lines, guiding children toward the exit. Some walked, some were carried. Others were barely alive. Every second counted as they passed. The last cage, the blue-skinned girl looked up at Kaylin and said something again. This time in a clear voice. Not the only place. Kaylin knelt. What do you mean? She pointed at the wall. Other stations. Other kids like me. His chest tightened. This wasn't one operation. This was a system. A machine. And tonight, it only unplugged one wire. But it was a start, and they weren't done yet. The hydroponics bay was the coldest, quietest part of Eliasnin years ago. It grew food for the whole station, but now it was just pipes, broken glass, and the wet smell of old soil. Kaylin moved through the shadows, keeping his hand close to his, sidearm eyes flicking to every echo and shadow. Laraka followed behind him, leading a thin line of shivering alien children, each one covered in old engineer blankets and scrap jackets. Above them, vents rattled as heavy boots passed overhead security. Teams sweeping the main corridors, looking for missing cargo. Kaylin knew those boots weren't coming to help. They were coming to erase the problem, clean and quiet, just like always. He crouched near a broken grow lamp and waved Laraka over. She herded the children close, making them kneel in the dirt and stay quiet. Even the smallest ones, still shaking from fear and cold, seemed to understand how important it was to stay invisible. Kaylin's datapad buzzed. He slid it open, keeping the screen low. A message flashed from a maintenance bot. Air recycler set for 2201. Door will unlock for 10 seconds. No alarms if you're fast. He glanced at the clock. 3 minutes left. Laraka's hand shook as she checked the kids' vitals with a med scanner. Some were so weak she could barely find a pulse. The blue-skinned girl was awake now, her voice soft as she sang to a small child with orange feathers growing from her arms. The song was low, soothing a promise that this nightmare might actually end. Kaylin peered through a crack in the metal wall. Beyond, the old waistline twisted down to the shuttle bay. If they could just get through, there was a slim chance. He'd already tagged a maintenance shuttle for urgent trash removal. The only way to open the loading doors without alerting Central Security. He turned to Liaraka. When the door unlocks, we have 10 seconds. I'll go first. Carry as many as you can. I'll pull the rest. Liaraka nodded. Her eyes glistened, but her jaw was set hard. Suddenly, the oldest boyarch coughed and doubled over. His skin was flush dark, his breathing ragged. Kalen knelt by him, worry surging. Wait. He can't breathe. Liaraka scanned him and gasped. He's not getting enough ammonia. The air here is killing him. Kalen ripped off his own mask, fitting it over the boy's face. I'll hold my breath. You run. Liaraka quickly tore open her utility pouch, mixing an emergency air capsule with a few drops from her own inhaler. The chemical reaction filled the mask with a small puff of clear vapor. Raj coughed, then breathed easier. Kalen's lungs burned. He counted silently. 5 seconds. 10, 20. Finally, Liaraka pressed a soft hand to his shoulder. The door's about to open. There was a quiet click, the maintenance signal. Go, Kalen rasped. He shoved the hatch open. Cool, recycled air rushed in. The children stumbled through Liaraka, scooping up the smallest two, Kalen carrying Raj and another tiny infant, their skin blue-white with cold. They moved fast. For a moment, the old hydroponics corridor was just filled with the shuffling sound of frightened feet and the wild pounding of Kalen's heart. Behind them, doors slid shut and locked again, but the silence didn't last. A harsh voice echoed through the intercoms, bouncing off every wall of the bay. This is Central Command. Unauthorized movement detected in Section 24. All staff, report in. All personnel, cure the area. Liaraka looked at Kalen with panic in her eyes. No. Kalen checked the path ahead. The shuttle was just 2 turns away. But down the corridor, shadows moved. Flashlights coming fast, he pulled the kids into a dark alcove. Liaraka pressed herself flat against the wall, the blue-skinned girl still in her arms. Footsteps pounded closer. 2 security officers rushed past, not even glancing into the dark. Kalen saw their badges, temporary contractors, not real station staff. They didn't care about the kids. They cared about getting paid. As soon as the hallway cleared, Kalen gave a quick nod. This way. They sprinted, moving in ragged lines, hands gripping sleeves. Silent, except for the smallest whimpers. They rounded the last corner. There it was, the shuttle bay door, standing open. A maintenance bot, old and battered, waved a single arm. Hurry, it beeped. The children piled in, Liaraka helping them buckle into safety straps, Kalen checking for any stragglers. Suddenly, a beam of light swept through the doorway. A security guard stood there at all, masked, weapon drawn. Kalen put himself between the kids and the man, chest heaving. The guard paused. He saw the children, saw the officer uniforms. His finger tightened on the trigger. For a moment, nobody breathed. Then the guard did something strange. He lowered his weapon just a little and said in a low voice, "You didn't see me. I didn't see you." He pressed a code into the wall. Panel. Unlocking the exterior doors. 5 minutes before backup. Go. Kalen stared at him in shock. But there was no time to ask why. He slammed the shuttle door. Liaraka punched the launch sequence. The engines whined, dust swirling in the dark. As the shuttle roared out of the bay, Kalen looked back. The guard was already gone. For the first time, few of the children began to cry, not from fear, but from hope. But as the stars turned outside the windows and the alarms began to blare across the station, Kalen knew they were still not safe, because someone powerful wanted these children back and would stop at nothing to erase every witness. The maintenance shuttle sped away from Eliasni, its engines humming quietly as it drifted into the shadow of an old asteroid belt. Kalen sat by the window, eyes searching the darkness for any sign of pursuit. Beside him, Liaraka comforted the blue-skinned girl, wrapping her in a soft blanket they found in the supply locker. Around them, more than 30 rescued children huddled close together, some dozing, some whispering in strange languages, some just staring in shock at the stars outside. Kalen knew they were not safe yet. The station security, or the people running the smuggling ring, found them. None of them would survive the hour. He kept checking the radar screen, watching for any ships following their course. So far, nothing. But he knew it wouldn't last. LaRocca whispered, "We need to find shelter, somewhere with air and medical care." Kalen nodded. I tapped the com and brought up an old list of abandoned mining docks, hidden places at the edge of the belt, half forgotten by most of the galaxy. Here, Dock 14, Delta, it's off the grid. Smugglers used it when I was a rookie. LaRocca tried to smile. Let's hope it's still empty. The shuttle's computer guided them to the old docking bay. The lights inside were faint, flickering like dying fireflies. As the hatch opened, cold, stale air swept in. Kalen stepped out first, weapon ready, but the place was silent, just shadows. Metal crates and old machinery humming quietly in the dark. One by one, the children climbed out, blinking in the strange light. Some coughed, others stared in fear. At the empty space, Kalen moved quickly, checking each crate for supplies. He found a crate of water packets and heat blankets, old, but usable. LaRocca worked fast, spreading blankets and setting up a corner where the weakest children could rest. The blue-skinned girl helped, gently holding the hands of the smallest ones, humming a soft tune that made the others calm down. As Kalen moved through the shadows, he noticed a blinking panel on the far wall, a security terminal. Dusty, but still working. Curious, he swiped the console and pulled up old station logs. LaRocca joined him. Find anything? Kalen frowned. It was a medical team here, months ago. They recorded something strange, a group of children, sick, all with artificial ID chips. No parents, no official record. They sent a warning to Central Command. After that, nothing. LaRocca's face tightened. Someone is wiping the records. Kalen nodded. Someone high up. He checked the logs at Gandon, found one last file. A message never sent. Help us, please. They're not just children. They're the file cut off. Kalen felt a chill. This place isn't just a hideout. It's where they kept the rejects. LaRocca knelt by one of the new arrivals, a tiny girl with golden scales and long, thin arms. She coughed weakly, shivering. LaRocca scanned her, then gasped. Her blood chemistry is all wrong. Someone has been experimenting with her genes. She's half aquatic, half something else. No way she could survive on any normal world. Kalen shook his head. They're not smuggling kids. They're building them. Engineering, perfect workers, pets, servants, maybe even weapons. In the corner, one of the older boys, Raj, spoke quietly. They called us property. If we didn't obey, they took our food away. Kalen clenched his fists. Not anymore. LaRocca looked at the group. What about their families? If they have any, how will we find them? Kalen thought for a long moment. We get their data. DNA. Broadcast it to every neutral world and humanitarian group in the sector. Someone will answer. He began scanning each child, carefully logging their DNA and eye prints, recording their features. The kids were frightened at first, but the blue-skinned girl helped, smiling and singing. Softly, so they wouldn't panic. Hours passed. Outside, strange sounds echoed through the metal walls, the shifting rocks of the asteroid belt. Maybe or something worse. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The old docking computer came to life. A message scrolled across the main screen. Incoming shuttle. Unregistered. Approach detected. Kalen's heart raced. Someone found us. LaRocca gathered the children, pressing them back into the darkest corner. Kalen drew his weapon and watched the airlock. The door hissed open. A tall figure stepped inside, dressed in a tattered smuggler's jacket, holding up empty hands. I'm not here to hurt you, the stranger said. I saw your signal. My name's Drin. I used to work for them, the ones who took these kids. Kalen didn't lower his gun. Prove it, Drin nodded, and pulled out a small, battered ID card. Genetic engineer. I was forced to help build their tracking chips. I know how to remove them if you don't. They'll always be able to find these children. LaRocca stared at the stranger, fear and hope mixing in her eyes. Kalen took a deep breath. Then help us. But if you betray us, you won't get a second chance. Dren nodded. I understand. As Dredd knelt by the blue-skinned girl and scanned the chip in her neck, he whispered, "I never wanted this, but I can make it right." In the darkness, as the doctor worked to free the children from their invisible chains, Kalen realized this. It was just the beginning. They had saved 30 lives tonight, but the fight to keep them free had only begun. The old mining dock, once a place of silence and dust, now pulsed with whispers and anxious movement. Kalen, Laraka, and Dren worked through the night, using every tool and scrap of knowledge they had to help the children. Dren carefully removed the tracking chips from each child, his hands steady, despite the tremble in his eyes. One by one, small implants were deactivated and placed in a pile on the metal floor. With every click, another invisible chain fell away. Helped 3 more huddled together, scared and exhausted, needing comfort that only hope could bring. Kalen barely slept. He took guard shifts by the main door, always watching the scanners for any sign of pursuit. He replayed the faces of the men in the video, the voice that had threatened them, the officers who had turned away. Somewhere out there, the people behind this nightmare were still hunting. Liraka focused on the children. She moved from group to group, using her soft alien voice and gentle hands to calm their fears. Sometimes she sang quiet lullabies from her own childhood. The blue-skinned girl, never far from Laraka's side, became her little helper, offering water, adjusting blankets, even making the others laugh with her strange, twinkling toy. As dawn cycled through the station, a new message flashed on the docking bay screen. Urgent. All medical units report to Central Hub. Suspected outbreak. Quarantine in effect. Kalen frowned. It's a trap. They're trying to pull us out. Dren agreed. They're searching. But the children's signals are gone. For now, they're invisible. He pointed to a map on his battered datapad. But there's more. Look. He tapped a blinking red dot on the screen. A live auction today. They're selling a new batch. On the main deck, high-level buyers only. Laraka's eyes went cold. They're not stopping. They have more children. Kalen clenched his jaw. We can't just hide. We have to. Stop them for good. Dren hesitated. You don't understand. The buyers aren't just criminals. Some are politicians, diplomats. They have power. They'll cover this up. If you make noise, you might not survive. The children might vanish again. Kalen shook his head. We expose them. With evidence, he glanced at Laraka. Will you help? She nodded. All the way, they made a plan. Kalen would sneak onto the main deck disguised as a cargo hauler. Laraka, with her old smuggling skills, would tap into the security feeds and broadcast the auction live across every public screen on the station. Drin would stay behind, caring for the children and preparing a safe escape route. Before they left, the blue-skinned girl tugged at Liraka's sleeve. Promise you'll come back? She whispered. Liraka knelt beside her, touching her forehead gently. I promise. Kalen and Laraka set out. The mining dock door slid open with a hiss, cold air sweeping over their faces as they slipped into the maze of maintenance tunnels. Kalen wore a dirty jumpsuit and pushed a hover cart filled with empty crates. Liraka followed a separate route, her data stick ready, eyes sharp for any sign of patrols. The tunnels were tight, lit by flickering old lights. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. Above them, the station's main deck bustled with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. But under that bright surface, shadows moved, guards, dealers, and secret buyers looking for their new acquisitions. Kalen reached the service lift, pressed a hidden code Dren had given him. The lift hummed to life, rising to a back. Door behind the auction hall, meanwhile, Liraka crawled through a vent, slipping past cameras and sensors with old smuggler's tricks. She reached a small service hatch above the main floor, her fingers flying over the console as she tapped into the live security feed. Down below, the auction was already in progress. Well-dressed aliens and humans sat in rows, their faces cold and hungry. On the stage, a trembling child stood under a bright light, his ID tag shining for the crowd. The auctioneer. A tall woman with gold earrings and a voice like poison called out, "Next lot, special genetics, loyal and obedient. Bidding starts now." Numbers flashed on screens. voices whispered. Money flowed. LIR, aka single quotes. His hands shook as she hacked the feed, rerouting the signal to every display screen across Ilyasny. Suddenly, the images of the frightened children filled every public hall, every office, every shop. Station staff, travelers, and bystanders everywhere froze, staring in shock and horror. Kalen saw confusion spreading. Some buyers jumped to their feet, shouting. Others tried to hide their faces. He moved fast, pushing his cart onto the stage. The auctioneer snarled, "Who are you?" "This is a private." Kalen pulled out his badge, then held up the pile of deactivated tracking chips. "This is over. You're finished." Security rushed in, but Laraka's broadcast continued. Across the station, people began to shout and call for justice. A few guards dropped their weapons. Others tried to run. Kalen shielded the nearest children as chaos broke loose. Buyers pushed for the exits. The auctioneer tried to erase the broadcast, but Laraka locked the feed. Station command tried to shut it all down, but the evidence was everywhere. Images, voices, files. Too many witnesses now. As emergency alarms began to blare, Kalan led the children off the stage and back through the service tunnel. Laraka followed, breathless, heart pounding. In the mining dock, Dren waited with the blue-skinned girl and the others. When Kalen and Laraka returned, the little girl ran into Laraka's arms, crying with relief. They had exposed the truth. The ring was broken, but as Kalen looked at the frightened, rescued children, he knew their journey was far from over. Someone still had to give them a real home. After the truth was broadcast across the station, everything changed fast. For the first time in years, the dark halls of Ilyasny felt full of voices, some angry, some shocked, but all awake now to the secret they could never unsee. The auction ring was broken. Corrupt leaders and buyers tried to hide, but everywhere they turned, faces stared back, accusing, refusing to look away. Public outcry grew so loud, even the station commander could not silence it. But for Kalen, Laraka, and the children, survival was still not guaranteed. The mining dock, once their hiding place, became a meeting point for every investigator, healer, and volunteer willing to help. Relief teams brought food, clean clothes, and warm blankets. Medical officers set up cots in long lines, tending to the sick and the small. But it wasn't easy. Many children were too weak to speak. Some hid from every stranger. Some woke in. The night screaming would take more than medicine to heal them. Laraka stayed at their side, becoming like a mother to dozens at once. She made up stories at night, stories of her own lost home where families were chosen by love, not by law or blood. The blue-skinned girl never left her, shadowing her every move, helping the younger ones eat or sleep, humming her gentle songs. When fear returned, sometimes, late at night, Laraka caught her gazing at the stars through a small porthole, whispering in her native tongue. Maybe a prayer, maybe a memory. Kalen handled the chaos outside. He worked with the relief crews, checking ID logs, making lists of those still missing, those found, and those who needed more help. He never let himself rest. Each time he looked at the children, he remembered how close they'd come to being. He raced how many had already been lost. He swore to himself it would never happen again. One afternoon, as he finished another long shift, a voice called from the crowd, a tired woman with bright eyes and a nervous smile. She held out a shaking hand. "My name is Amiri," she said, voice trembling. "That one, the boy with green skin and golden eyes, he's mine. He was taken from our village months ago, we thought. Right? We thought he was dead." Kalen led her through the rows of cots. The boy saw her. He froze. Then he leaped into her arms, and for the first time Kalen saw him smile. It was not the only reunion.
Ow.
All over the dock, others, parents, siblings, guardians, some alien, some human, some neither.
Ow.
DNA matches, found families across stars. The station broadcast their rescue, and soon ships arrived from far-off worlds, full of people searching for lost children. But not every child found a family. Many had no record. Some were made, not born. No planet called them home. For these children, a different future was needed. Laraka made her decision quietly, but with no regret. "I will take them," she told Kaylin one evening as they watched. "The children draw pictures on the floor, bright shapes and new dreams. All those with no home, I will be their mother." He smiled at her, the weight lifting from his face for the first time. "And I'll help," he said. "No one should ever be alone again." Kalan filed his resignation from the security force. Instead, he started work at a new interspecies adoption agency formed right there on Elias Nina, place where anyone, human or alien, could offer a real home to a child in need. As weeks passed, the mining dock changed. The walls were painted. Bright colors, old broken machines became playthings. The children played, learned, and laughed, sometimes shy, sometimes wild, but always together. The blue-skinned girl, who once hid in silence, became a leader among them, teaching others her songs, helping the smallest ones take their first steps on solid ground. One evening, as the sun set through the station's great viewing window, the children gathered with Kaylin and Laraka for a small celebration. They shared sweet fruit, danced to strange music, and, at the end, the blue-skinned girl handed Laraka a piece of paper. It was a drawing, crude but beautiful. On it were two adults, a human and an alien, holding hands. Round them were dozens of smiling children under a sky full of stars. At the bottom, in careful, shaky writing, were the words, "Thank you for saving us. You are our real family now." Laraka wept openly. Kalan just hugged her, letting the tears fall. As the stars rose outside and laughter filled the hall, everyone knew the scars of the past would never truly fade. But here on this small station in the dark, hope had found a place to grow. And for every child once hidden, there was finally a light that could not be put out.